You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia.
Hi, everybody.
Today's episode is a very special episode because we have two fantastic guests with us, Emily and Kelsey, from another podcast called A Trial by Podcast. So if you would, please say hello to the chillers.
Hello, chillers.
Hey.
Thank you very much. So we are both going to be sharing some stories and just doing a fun little collab. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
I'm going to enjoy it. I know already.
I know.
All right. So for our case, what we're going to do is I'm going to tell the story of events, and then Talia is going to go over a little of the aftermath /
Theories.
Thank you. Theories.
Love it.
Okay. So, and feel free to jump in anytime you both want with literally anything, because she does that all the time.
Yeah.
Literally,
Okay,
don't worry. We are great at interrupting, so
Okay.
we'll be here.
Yep.
All
Sorry in
right.
advance.
It doesn't bother me.
I'm used to it. Okay, so this is going to be the case of David Glenn Lewis. So, which I'll just call him David from now on. But so David was born on December 11th, 1953, in Texas. Parents were William and Esther. He graduated magna cum laude from Texas Tech University in 1975. And he graduated with a political science degree and then went on to obtain a Juris Doctorate degree from the same university in 1979. So David married a woman named Karen Garrett in 1982. And then the couple had their one and only child, which was a daughter named Lauren, a year later. So just a very brief description of David. He was described by friends and family as being the kind of person who enjoyed helping others. And David was very active in several charitable organizations as well as his local church. So that is the background on where we are going to start this story.
Okay.
It's always the
He
good
was
ones.
very involved, yeah.
Involved in the community, like strong in the church community. It's always the saddest stories.
Mm-hmm.
We were just saying that with our last podcast. It's like, as Talia says over and over, nobody deserves to be murdered. And I do agree with that. But when it's a particularly
Well-rounded individual.
right, wholesome person
Yeah.
giving back to the community, it does, it's just
Breaks your heart.
even
differently.
more tragic. Yes.
Yeah, hits a little harder.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So January 28th, 1993.
1993. Like Hocus Pocus, Thora Birch. That's how she says it. Fans.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Whenever there's anything mentioned with anything 3, I do the 1919.
I told her I would give her one of those for this episode.
Yeah, I was warned.
I love it. I want a second one. I want one more before we
I
finish.
can arrange it.
I agree.
I feel like you'll find the perfect moment when we tell our story.
Oh, that she's off the rails for. I said to her when we were getting ready for this, I was like, so, I said, I feel like a trial by podcast audience is going to think one of two things. Either, what a charming new duo you've brought onto the show for a guest spot, or who the hell are these two idiots?
No, but that's what our audience loves. I feel like that's what our listeners think of us. They're like, who the hell are these two idiots telling
just
true
two
crime
idiots
stories?
with the mics.
But
I don't
that's
think
what they
that when I
love.
listen to it, but
You guys are.
That should be one of our new merch slogans. 2 idiots with a mic.
Two idiots with microphones.
Yeah.
No, I think they're gonna love you guys.
I hope so.
Yeah, you guys
okay.
have good vibes.
Well, thank you. So do you.
They do.
They do, yes. Okay, so January 28th, 1993. So David served as a county judge, and he did this from 1986 to 1990. And some of the things, he covered cases that were misdemeanors, civil cases, probate matters and juvenile cases. But in 1990, he lost his reelection bid. So he went back to practicing law as an attorney instead of being a judge. So now we are on the day of January 28th, 1993. So David leaves work that day, midday, saying that he felt ill and he decided to go home early. But that evening, despite feeling unwell, he still went to teach his government class at Amarillo College until 10 p.m. that night. This is one of the last confirmed times that authorities think that they had a good grasp on where David was. So now the next day, January 29th, this is a Friday, David's wife and their daughter, they depart for a weekend shopping trip. And they're going to be doing this in Dallas. So they leave that morning, and I guess they don't really have any interaction with David that morning. Like, they get up early and they leave.
And no cell phones at that time. So it's not, like, I feel like normally you'd be like checking in and what are you up to? How's it going?
I do. And none of that.
None of that.
Right.
I can't imagine, because if my family doesn't text me back in like 2 hours, I assume I'm like, they're dead. Something happened.
Yes, always.
I would just,
there.
Cell phones were made for us anxious people. Like, I can't imagine living without a cell phone.
I would never have survived in the 50s. Well,
I keep thinking about like GPS. I wouldn't leave my house.
Even with GPS, I feel like I still go the wrong way.
Me and Emily were following a GPS once, and she told me to turn left, and I turned left. I was going the wrong way down a one-way street. That's how. So imagine us without GPS.
But the funniest part of that was that I said, okay, my bad. And then I tell you to turn another right down a different street.
Okay, sorry, go this way.
And it's another one-way
street.
Way.
I did it we went the right way once, and then we went the wrong way again.
Yeah. We can't be helped.
No, because you put your faith in them regardless.
I've just accepted it. We accept each other's flaws, and we just so happen to have the same one in its directions.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so anyway, David, he was not going on this shopping trip, right? He planned to stay home because, from what my research told me, there was a big sports ball event happening called the Super Bowl.
Oh, you've heard of it.
Oh, I've heard of these sports balls before.
Yeah, I am mildly aware of it.
Yes.
Ball events.
I remember seeing the Alex Earl commercials for it. That's it. That's all I remember.
Fine. I have heard that a lot of people do care about this, though. I'm not one of them, but I know that they're out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a handful.
So this was Super Bowl 27, which was happening on Sunday, which would be the day after this. So during this day, David is, I guess, just hanging around the house. I mean, there's not much said in terms of, like, with the police being able to track his movements at this time. But on January 30th, which is now Saturday, in the morning, a neighbor in David's hometown says that they remember seeing David's red Explorer parked in the driveway. And sometime during this day of the 30th of January, this is when police believe that this was the official last time David was ever seen. So now January 31st rolls around, which is the day of the Super Bowl. And that morning, a Potter County Sheriff's deputy noticed that David's red Explorer was parked outside of the courthouse in which he worked in Amarillo. And he had noted that a man matching David's description was seen across the street photographing this vehicle. I'm not sure why, but he was. So that evening, around 11:15 p.m., Karen and her daughter come home to sort of like some odd circumstances. So the first thing they notice is that David is nowhere to be found. But some of the circumstances were that the VCR was still recording the Super Bowl game. So I guess it had been set to record from the kickoff, which is something that happens in football. And
I've heard of that before. I think they kicked the ball.
Listen, I just want my demographic of people to know this also.
You're right. We got to go step by step.
Yes, I'm trying to be very cognizant and mindful of everyone.
We appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome.
I'm sure they appreciate it too.
In the kitchen, another strange thing that they saw was that there were two what appeared to be freshly made turkey sandwiches in the refrigerator, and David's wedding ring and his watch were just left out on the counter. There was also laundry that had been partially done, and the clothes were still left in the washer and dryer, but nothing in the house was like disturbed or missing in terms of like
No
like
sign of foul play.
right, like a robbery or like weird things happening. There were weird things, but not things that were weird in a way of somebody might have come in to
Like out of place or
yes.
It's almost like he just vanished into thin air.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So now, from my research, at first, even though I just described all those things, Karen thinks that there's nothing wrong. So I'm chalking that up to it's the 90s, you know?
Yes.
So Karen says, well, maybe he went and watched the rest of the game with a friend, or he returned to the office. So she didn't panic and she didn't call anybody.
She didn't even know either. He didn't even.
No.
I don't know about that.
But I honestly, I'm trying to like put myself in her shoes. I'm like, if I just came home and it's like his watch, his ring's there, but like everything seems normal, I'd be like, huh, that's weird. Like, I wonder where he went, but I wouldn't be concerned at this point. Like that something happened to him. I feel like I'd just be like, that's weird. Why would he leave these things home? But
yeah, like did you just forget them on the counter? Or
Yeah.
I left the sandwiches.
the sandwiches.
I get hungry at all times.
Yeah, well, me too. So, but yeah, I mean, and I agree. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be calling the police, but it is weird.
yes, for sure.
So now we get to Monday. So David, now he's failed to show up for multiple work appointments, which is very unlike him. And Karen finds out about this and she has grown now concerned. And now she has reported him to the Amarillo police. So that same day, an Amarillo officer searching downtown discovered David's Explorer. And I guess once again, it's parked out in front of the Potter County Courts building, which is the same spot that they saw it over the weekend. But if you remember, the car did apparently move back to the house because the neighbor saw it the next day. So at that point, the car had still been, it wasn't just stationary.
Floating around.
Right.
Interesting.
So they check inside the SUV and the police find David's checkbook, his driver's license, 2 gas credit cards, and just like normal items that he would customarily keep in the car. And the keys to the truck and to the house were hidden under the floor mat.
Which was a very 90s thing to do, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
My grandpa used to keep all of his keys in his cars, and I said, Grandpa, somebody's going to take your cars.
Well,
Visor. Wasn't the visor a thing? People
the visor.
My only advice for people, my car got stolen last year. It
oh
was
my
locked.
God.
It was because it was a Kia and there was like a security issue with Kias. I'm part of a class action. But my advice to anyone leaving their keys in their car is make sure you have gap insurance, because if your car gets stolen, it's really expensive.
Oh my
Get that
gosh,
gap
that's
insurance, guys.
fair.
It's worth the extra $20 a month.
Well,
Oh.
Talia and I both had our cars broken into once. And what did you say?
Oh my, I was just thinking of that. So I said to him, this was years ago, and I got in my car one morning to go to work, and like, it just didn't feel quite right. And my car is no longer like this, but years ago, just a mess. Like there was shit everywhere. And it was the catch-all for everything and anything. So
It was a girl car.
Sounds like my car.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like my car.
And I said I felt like whoever, and someone had clearly been in and they were looking around for something and didn't find anything of value to them. And I said to him, I feel like they got in and thought, this is a disaster. I don't even have time to look for anything. Like, I'm out. And like they just called it quits.
They said, moving on to the next
The
car.
messy car is just a security tactic.
Yeah. I'm never cleaning my car out again.
I love it.
Because I do remember once I was like, Talia, we have got to just clean out at least the trunk. And when I met her, I was like a flea market in the back.
She has like antiques.
Not necessarily antiques, but more like dollar store items.
They came antiques all over the years of being in there.
Collectibles.
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
All right, now we're on February 2nd, and the investigation into David's disappearance picks up more momentum in Texas. And so the police, I guess, took David's car and processed it. And again, going through it one more time, they still noted nothing suspicious. Like there wasn't, like blood or anything like that. So the police had a high profile missing persons case on their hands because, he was a former judge.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So, that's
could have been after him.
Right. That's what they are dealing with. And David's family and friends began a frantic search, and they started doing like media appeals for the missing attorney / former judge, and they were just in full swing looking for him. So now, this is a bit of a weird case to try to tell chronologically. So that is what was going on. But now, simultaneously, there were other things going on, which I will now fill in the gaps for you.
Okay.
And I did my best to do this good. So on the day that they think one of the last days David was seen, after, I guess, doing some investigating, it was reported by a acquaintance / friend of David's that they had seen David running through the Amarillo airport, which, what are they doing? Just hanging out there? I don't know. But they said they saw him running through the airport, I want to say the day after the wife and daughter left for their shopping trip. And although it couldn't be 100% verified, David had a very distinctive pair of glasses, but like, I don't know, they were just really big, like 70s,
He had
60s
issues.
Like, but huge glasses. So
they were the
just
thick ones.
Yes.
Mr. Magoo, the Coke bottle.
Yeah.
Like they give you like the bubble out eyes. Okay. I can picture it.
Yeah. I was just like, I almost want to say serial killer-esque glasses.
Serial killer glasses are like the aviator, non-sunglass aviators, though.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer glasses.
That's where my mind went, like Dahmer.
Yeah.
Well, for any listeners, you can feel free to type his name in Google because he does have his picture there with his glasses on. So like I said, one of the neighbors, which I believe on that Friday, saw him running through the airport. Also, though, on January 30th, which was the Saturday, after looking into the case, somebody mysteriously deposited $5,000 into David and his wife's joint bank account. But investigators could not determine who made this deposit, and no direct link to David could ever be confirmed. I don't even know how that's possible, but maybe in the 90s it wasn't.
Hey, didn't you have to go in person to make a deposit in the 90s? There was no mobile anything.
Yeah, but maybe there were just no cameras, so like they couldn't say for sure it was David and not somebody else. But in my mind, it has to be him, because if someone killed him over something, why would they give $5,000 to his
why
account?
would they put money in his account?
An act of good faith.
Seems counterproductive.
Maybe.
No, you're right. That definitely doesn't make sense.
So now February 1st, again, this is stuff that's filling in the blanks. Karen had later admitted that David had told her a few weeks before this was all going on that he thought that he might be in danger because of a high profile case that he was going to be involved in.
Which, don't you find it odd, though, that nobody else said that? Like, if that were the case, I would think he would say it to not just his wife, like maybe colleagues or no.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. Like, you would think people at work would know at least which case he's referring to. Like, this one's a little bit sketchy. Like, these people are a little bit scary.
Right.
Hey, I think it was just convenient for Karen to say, I don't get a good vibe from Karen from the start. But
Talia never gets a good vibe from
anyone.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The spouse is always like, I have one eyebrow up at the spouse.
Of
always.
Course. And I guess the detective who was running the case did not get on with her very great, because she refused to take a polygraph test.
Exactly. That's my other thing.
Good for her, though.
You know,
I wouldn't take a polygraph either. But back in the day, they didn't have true crime and stuff, so you didn't know. Like, people didn't know that much about polygraphs and how they're used against you and those sorts of things. So it is a little bit sketch. Like at that time, that she wouldn't want to take it.
yeah.
I also feel like they relied a lot heavier on polygraphs back in the day.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they used to do like truth serum and everything. Like that's
Hell yeah.
I love it, dude. Let's get a little truth serum. Do a collab episode on some truth serum.
Okay, so now we're still on February 1st.
Okay.
So February 1st, a taxi driver. This is where it starts to get really far out there. A taxi driver in Dallas, which is 360 miles away. Keep in mind, he came forward to say that on February 1st, he had picked up a nervous man resembling David from a hotel and had driven him to the Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. And David, well, I shouldn't say the nervous man, we'll call him, because of course this wasn't verified either, but the fare was paid in cash. And the taxi driver said that the man who paid took out a wad of $100 bills to do so, which could kind of be consistent with the fact that David just got a $5,000 deposit in his bank account. So maybe he had cash on hand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So what happened now after this $5,000 deposit? Was there a withdrawal?
Or maybe he had 6,000 and deposited 5,000 of it and kept like the rest in cash.
Good call.
Either way, good for this nervous man. I've never had wads of hundreds in my pocket.
Me either.
My anxiety could never. I'm like, somebody's gonna know.
Yeah,
Somebody's gonna know.
I would.
Steal
That would
it.
make me nervous.
Yeah.
To have wads of hundreds in my
Somebody's
pocket.
gonna look at me and be like, "You
I
got a
would
lot
be
of money in your
scared.
pocket."
I would be like, I might go missing.
So, but anyway, like I said, at the end of the day, they could not confirm that this was actually David, but the guy really thought he matched the description, this taxi driver man.
Come forward too. Like he
Absolutely.
still said something.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So on the night of February 1st, an even stranger development occurred, not 360 miles away, but let's try 1,600 miles away. So around 10:30 on February 1st, a motorist driving down a highway in Moxie, Washington, like Washington State, spotted what looked to be a disoriented man walking in the roadway of State Route 24.
What were you going to say, Kelsey?
And I'm sorry, he's from Texas, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're thinking maybe that's where he was running to the airport. Maybe he flew to Washington.
Right.
Okay.
Nothing. Yeah. So when these people saw this random man in Washington State, like looking very uneasy walking down the highway, they were concerned. So they decided that they were going to turn around to warn other drivers about this man just kind of standing in the road. Unfortunately, by the time they returned, the man had been struck by a vehicle, and which actually resulted in a hit and run because he died and the vehicle never stopped. So, like I said, the victim died at the scene. He carried no identification, and he was purely listed as an unidentified John Doe by the authorities in Washington State.
That is so sad.
Yeah.
But he was just standing in the middle of the road.
Looking very, like, what would you say?
Disoriented.
Yes, disoriented. Thank you.
Surely.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, that's
I'm sorry?
If I could just say quick, I have been broken down on the side of the road many times, and on a highway specifically, it is so like scary to me how your car will like rock from like the tractor trailers.
Hell yeah.
How like windy and just it's such an overwhelming place to be. And if you're like not even able to think straight and like if he was lost or whatever was happening, I just can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. Like just what a
And the fact that someone hit him and then just drove away.
I know.
I mean, I cannot. Obviously, like there are accidents that are genuine accidents. And especially if someone's just standing on the highway, I'm sure that's horrific. If you're that driver and you do that, your life has changed forever.
Oh.
But to just not stop, I just can't even. How could you do that? Like the anxiety would overwhelm me. That's crazy. It's horrific too. You should always stop.
A few days ago, well, maybe not, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was driving home. I just hit a pothole and my anxiety convinced me I hit something else, maybe a person, maybe an animal. And I decided I was turning around 2 blocks later to make sure that nothing had happened, and nothing had happened. But
I've been there.
Hey,
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Respect for the wraparound, though. You said, I don't know. It gave me a funny feeling, so I'm going to go check it out.
Because I was going to say, I'm not sleeping tonight. I know it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, good for you.
So now we are February 2nd in Washington. So the man that was killed in Washington, he's now in the morgue. I'm watching my cat doesn't put her tail directly on my straw. She loves to do that, or God forbid, even higher up on the tail, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, but now she's settled, so good. So the autopsy of this John Doe determined that he died from traumatic injuries consistent with a high impact vehicle collision. So, all right, that makes sense.
Awful. But like no other, like it's not like he was injured before or had been beaten or even stabbed or there was like blood loss going on and then that happened.
Hypothermia. That's always a very fun one for most of these cases, but we don't know what the weather was there. But I'm sure it was freaking cold February 2nd in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so there was no evidence of, as Talia just said, a gunshot or stabbing wounds. Toxicology tests found that there was no alcohol or any kind of drugs in his system. So this indicated that the man was sober and likely on foot by choice or necessity when he was struck. And police had noted that the stretch of road where he was hit was dark and that the shoulders were not well defined, meaning that a pedestrian could easily be accidentally clipped by a car. Witnesses reported seeing a light-covered Chevrolet Camaro speeding away from the area around the time of the incident, but investigators were never able to locate the vehicle or the driver. And nobody ever came forward saying that they hit a pedestrian. And as I said, the body had no ID on it. So they were kind of stuck with just this concept that this was just, unfortunately, an unknown man. He was dressed in camouflage patterned, I guess, pants and a military-style jacket with work boots. So I guess he was paired for something, one could imagine.
Well, and I'll get to this when I go to talk about the theories, but that was like something that stood out, that he didn't own clothes like that. Like that was not a normal way that he dressed.
Right. I don't picture an attorney just like in full camo and work boots. Yeah. Interesting.
Right. And the wife did say that she did not believe that David owned such items. So, but anyway, the John Doe did not match any missing persons in the national database. So now, those are the two simultaneous stories that are happening. I think we obviously know that there's going to be a connection between these two stories.
I have a feeling I might know what it is.
Right, exactly. I think you two have been doing this long enough, just as we have to know that, you know, this isn't two separate cases I'm talking about. So now in between 1993 and 2003, so in the next decade, this is what basically happens. So in the weeks and months following David's disappearance, investigators were tracking all of those weird clues that I told you about before, like the money being deposited and stuff like that. They also discovered that 2 airline tickets had been purchased under David's name around the time he vanished. But these tickets didn't really make a lot of sense either, because one ticket was for a flight on January 31st from Dallas to Amarillo, and the other one was February 1st from Los Angeles to Dallas. So it would kind of make sense if the second one was from Dallas to Los Angeles, where the taxi man thought he saw this nervous man with a wad of $100 bills, but it was the opposite direction. Like it was coming.
So there's no way he could have taken both flights because they didn't line up.
Right. I don't think so.
Oh, weird.
The taxi man was taking David to the airport in Dallas, not from the airport.
Oh,
where the
weird.
other, so yeah, just a lot of, and the thing is, this was what, 8 years before 9/11. So like air travel was basically like just hailing a taxi at that point. You
Right.
weren't doing all this stuff that you're doing now. So by mid 1993, despite nationwide bulletins, all the leads had dried up, and David's case eventually goes cold. So then in 2002, Amarillo authorities officially suspend their active investigation, believing that there was no evidence of foul play and suspecting that David might have just like pieced out on his own. So now we are in October of 2004. 11 years after David disappears, there is a crucial breakthrough that happens. A detective by the name of Pat Ditter.
Stop.
Talia.
Yikes.
Stop. The poor man.
Who
His
would
poor
do that?
children. The Ditter children? Uncle Ditter? Dude, you can't be Uncle Ditter.
Today's boy.
Mr. Ditter.
Oh, no. Oh.
Ugh.
Oh, whew, that's rough.
Oh
So
my God.
I'm sorry. Tell me more about
that's all
Detective
right.
Ditter.
So the detective, he revisits. He was like just revisiting some cold cases because I guess he had seen like a few series on missing persons, and he thought like, let's try some non-traditional methods to identify some people. So back in this times period, they actually referred to Google as a popular. It was like a popular search,
I think
popular
I
internet search.
Yeah, it was
Or something like, not like he just decided to Google it. Like it was
a big deal.
right. Like he was thinking out of the box. So anyway, he starts looking this stuff up. And within a week, the detective had compiled a short list of possible matches for the John Doe that was found in Washington. And one of these possible matches was, in fact, David Glenn Lewis. So what caught the detective's attention, though, was because the photograph that the detective saw was that the John Doe, as well as David, both had very distinctive brown tinted aviator style glasses. And he knew that these glasses, I guess they had been kept by the Washington police from the hit and run. So I guess he just had this feeling and went with his gut and saw that when they sent a picture of the glasses, again, they perfectly matched the style. And then they actually got a hold of the glasses and saw that they were also his very unique prescription. So this was the first definitive sign that this man might be David Lewis. But to be certain, Detective Ditter arranged for a DNA comparison. So they actually took a tissue sample from the John Doe, which they had kept since 1993, and also asked David's mother for a sample of her DNA. And the DNA came back with a 99.1% certainty that they were related.
So, and this is 11 years later.
Yep.
That is just horrific to know that for 11 years, this family had no idea what happened to him. Just his wedding ring and his watch are just on the counter. And the whole time, they knew what happened. Like somebody else knew what happened to him, That's heartbreaking.
Right.
I can't imagine.
Right. Because it all happened within like a 3-day time span.
Mm-hmm.
But, their knowledge of it was 11 years. So to wrap up my section, basically the Lewis family was notified. And by being notified, obviously, it brought an end to their, I guess, continued wonderings and gave them a little bit of closure. So David's remains, which were originally buried in Yakima, Washington, were now transferred back to Texas so that, he could be buried close to where he lived with his family. So now, we have the fact that the identification of John Doe is actually David, but we have no idea why any of these events transpired. And now, with hope and a prayer, I'm going to give this over to Talia and let her just talk about a few of the theories. Yeah. So
I am dying to hear these theories
Me
because my
too.
mind is like, I have no idea what happened here.
Yeah, I'm confused. I need answers.
Well, you probably won't get them from what I said.
because they don't get too excited.
I need theories is what I should have said.
Can you hold this?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm not going to move it. Trust me.
We have this ongoing issue in our episodes, and by we, I mean me, where I like here, can I have it for a second?
Absolutely.
So like we'll be talking and I need to have this right by my face. And then I just decide to put it down and I'm looking out the window and I stretch and I have and then I go to talk. Oh yeah. Thank you. Like exactly what just happened. And then I go to talk and I forget what we're doing. And I think we're just like in the same room having a conversation.
We're just chatting.
Yeah, I just can't. And then other times I'm holding it, but I hold it over here. It's so stupid. And then, we have to reset.
I like your setup though. I do like that.
Yeah.
So Emily's, we have like on this bar thing. I don't love them. I want to get like floor stands where it's just like perpendicular and comes out because when I'm looking at Emily, like the mic's right in front of her face. So I can't really see her face. I have mine like on a tabletop thing, like on a little desk. But my problem is while I'm telling the stories, I'm a little bit Italian. So I start talking with my hands and every once in a while I just bump the desk really hard from underneath and it's so loud in the microphone. So I have to like go back and start over.
Yeah. I can relate to the Italian struggles. Yes.
Yeah. I can't tell a story without talking with my hands. Then I just sound robotic.
Yeah. It's in our blood. So the police really did not suspect foul play. And their whole thing was that he left voluntarily, that this was like something that he sort of thought up and was a way to leave the family, not to say gently, but kind of just slip out. And
the Irish goodbye.
Yes. And it seemed consistent though with how he was as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I have is like what you have already like talked about. They thought what he had left, it like the fact that there was no evidence of a struggle in the house, everything was nice and calm. Now, the other though thought is that all of that was done by whoever the perpetrator was, if there was one, like that was all staged. Like all of this was just intentionally left the way that it was to make people think that like, oh, he just left on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing too I wanted to say was like what you were talking about with so much was going on in Texas and so much was going on in Washington. The fact that the DNA databases weren't like, there was no way to put in, oh, we have this man who's missing. Let's plug that DNA into something. And over here in Washington, we have a John Doe hit and run. Like, let's see if there's a match. Like there was no way to do that then. For those agencies and different departments to have like a way to communicate, and that obviously things are very different now than from in the 90s. So that didn't exist yet. That was like a barrier for sure. Detective Ditter, not Diddy. Detective Ditter really came through in the end on just like piecing everything. Oh, what I wanted to say too, the glasses. So I have terrible vision. Terrible. Ever since I was a kid, it's gotten much worse. And the fact that the glasses, I can't even see my own toes if I don't have my glasses.
Same.
Really?
Yeah.
People don't understand if they do not face these like if their vision isn't that bad, like you really like, what's your contact number if you don't mind me?
I think it's like negative 3.75 or something. I don't know. What is yours? Like negative?
Brace
80?
yourself.
Oh God.
-9.
No.
I'm on another level, man. And
I thought it was out of 5. I thought it was out of 5. I thought that was the max.
Well, that's what worries me. What is the max? Because if I'm at 9 and it's 10, what is there any hope for me coming up? I mean,
I feel like when her contacts must be so thick she can barely blink.
Right. Oh my God.
Normal thinness. I'm a candidate for LASIK.
I was going to say, are you someone that would consider doing LASIK?
I mean, I'm scared, but
me too.
I think I'm going to have to. I mean, what is the end here?
Contact life is the roughest life. People don't understand. It's really first world problems, but man, like waking up and just not being like, if I wake up, I have to have my phone 2 inches from my face to be able to see it.
Mhm.
Oh,
And I think,
it's
like,
rough.
what if I was born into a country that did not? What if we were in
You
a village
just
and
couldn't see for the rest, like,
be blind? I mean, I would never know what anyone looks like. I wouldn't know what toes look like. I don't.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
One time she woke up and grabbed her hairband
Oh my
and
God.
held it up.
Hair tie.
Yeah, sorry, her hair tie held it up to her face, where you, Kelsey, had just said where your phone is, like an inch from your nose, and then discovered that it was a centipede.
Oh, that's a real story, and I threw it.
Well, yeah, it's a real story.
Talk about a true, like an unsettling true crime case. Picking up a centipede.
thinking it's a hair tie. Oh.
And it was under my pillow. That's where, like, my hand. I thought, oh, my hair tie's under there. No, it was
Oh
a
my God.
nightmare. I couldn't breathe. I had to take a while to catch my breath.
Immediately no.
Oh, that's horrific. That's
Yeah.
horrific.
Yeah, I don't love that for you.
bugs. It's my least favorite bug. I can't get into them. I just,
No.
Yeah,
I don't
all
like
the
anything with more than
Why
4
do-
legs.
Yeah, why do you got so many legs, dude?
you don't need. Well, I guess they do.
Yeah,
It's a
what do
lot
you
of-
need all those legs
It's really
for?
a red flag when you have so many legs.
Yeah. Any legs over 4? No.
Not for
Immediately, no.
All right. Now let me just see here. Oh, so now the thing with this case that, like, how Karen had claimed he had this case that he told her he was being threatened or whatever, that he confided that his life was in danger. So, according to her, he refused to provide specifics, but someone did, I guess, report that he was scheduled to give a deposition the week after his disappearance. And it was a $3 million malpractice lawsuit. Is that, I mean, I don't know. Is it enough that someone would kidnap him? I suppose, and then he couldn't participate in the deposition. But that was something that they felt could, because he had, according to Karen, he had so much information and it was wrongdoing. And that was the other thing, wrongdoing supposedly by former colleagues, which then is like, I feel like apples and oranges, has nothing to do with the malpractice. But we think, like, Karen's just giving a lot of, I mean, it didn't all come from her, but I don't know. She just kept saying he had a lot of information on wrongdoing among his colleagues and then kind of like threw them under a bus. As if, like,
Yeah, like
what's I
she was
supposed
trying to, like, point to his coworkers, like, you should check these guys
So
out.
was she saying that in the way of, like, she thinks they did something to him, or that he had a reason to run, like he would have run off on his own?
Good question. Well, so I'll get to that answer. So she
Okay.
said that he was willing to basically, like, disclose whatever he needed to, and he was going to tell the truth, whoever it hurt, suggesting that during this deposition, it was going to expose someone. Again, not sure how that was going to tie in, if it was a malpractice suit, like how that was going to have anything to do with his colleagues. She thought that someone basically kidnapped him to prevent him from being able to participate and give these details up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Karen and other relatives just felt like it was inconceivable that he would have left the family, because he was such a family man. And the daughter, what was her name? Karen was the wife. I forget what the daughter
Lauren?
was. It? Not that it matters, but her birthday was coming up. And I guess that was just not something that he would have ever
Would have missed. Yeah.
Right. He was super involved in church as well, which the friend who saw him at the airport, not that it necessarily matters, but was someone from the church. And then I think I already said this about, so the $5,000 deposit, the police, like, that kind of bolstered their whole thing too, that he left voluntarily, that he wanted to just start a new life. Not that, I mean, I can't imagine $5,000, but at the same time, if you're starting a new life somewhere, it's $5,000 really, although in the 90s, I guess it would get you a little bit farther than, like, today.
Well, a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But Talia and I always say, like, that's always there. We get very frustrated when the police always go to, they just wanted to start anew.
Yeah.
But I guess in this case, maybe it's more possible than, like, a 9-year-old, but
Just wasn't someone with, like, a shaky life or a shaky past even. Like, he was well known in the community. He was a solid dude, like, professionally. What?
no, yeah.
Family wise.
Yes.
Like, it just doesn't really seem to sound like, oh, I could see why David would be doing this. And, like, what's he going to go do then for work after this? Like,
Yeah. I feel like, to me, it sounds possible that he maybe was just trying to leave his family. But then the fact that he was just standing that's where I get caught up, is like, it almost seems like there was something, like he was having some sort of like psychiatric episode or something. Why are you just standing in the middle of the highway if you're trying to leave your family? That's odd to me.
Right. And not under the influence of anything. Nothing was in his bloodstream. Like, it's not like any other factor was at play that.
Yeah, he wasn't like doing drugs or.
Right. Even too, like, one of the things that Karen was saying, that he was tricked into going out to Washington. But again, like, he wasn't like this impressionable, didn't sound like this impressionable person who could easily be swayed, and an adult man who had been a judge and like an accomplished attorney was tricked. It just doesn't, I don't know. Another thing the police were thinking, or I'm sorry, it was a police officer, that this had they refer to it as like the earmarkings of suicide, that possibly he was acting, well, basically like what you were touching on, Kelsey, like that there was some sort of like psychiatric break going on, and that maybe because of the deposition and the lawsuit, and that was like wearing on him, and that potentially he was like considering ending his life, went out to this highway, and that the hit and run, like that's what he wanted to have happen.
Just odd that he would go to Washington to do so.
Yeah.
Yes, that was also mentioned. Yes. Yes, correct. So it's kind of all I have.
Well, there's no shame in that.
Don't worry, because our story is going to leave you very similarly, where it's like, here are some theories, but none of them fully make sense, and we have no answers on what happened.
Yeah. Just sort of like those two. Like, I hate when they're not resolved, but then I also like, it really makes you wonder, and like possibilities are endless, but also so hopeless and awful that like you're never going to know. Like, they're never going to know what truly happened here with him. And like, what I would imagine not, although 11 years it took for that breakthrough.
Well,
so who the hell knows? But
check back in another 10.
Right.
Okay. This is kind of a big one, so we've probably heard of it, but it is the case of Bryce Laspisa. Have you guys heard this name before?
No.
Okay. This is one that I've heard on a bunch of different podcasts, and I've been wanting to cover it. It's very similar to another case that we already covered, the case of Brandon Swanson, who was another 19-year-old kid who went missing.
Yes, we did that one.
Yes. Okay. So you know the Brandon Swanson case. You will see a lot of similarities with this one. So in August 2013, 19-year-old college student Bryce Laspisa vanished without a trace. His SUV was found wrecked near Castaic Lake, California, but Bryce was gone. The car had been driven off a 25-foot cliff, and it was crashed. The back window was kicked out, and Bryce was nowhere to be found.
He survived the crash.
He survived the crash. There were a couple drops of blood found in the car, but like nothing crazy.
A couple drops after he went off a 20-foot cliff. Wow.
Yeah. There were no confirmed sightings of him. There was no body. There was just a trail of strange behavior leading up to one of the most baffling disappearances in recent history, in my opinion. So Bryce had recently returned to Sierra College in Rocklin, California, to begin his sophomore year. He was majoring in graphic and industrial design. Woot woot to Emily. She's a graphic designer. But he seemed to be thriving in school. He was like creatively gifted. He was charismatic, and he was well liked by his friends. He was social. He seemed to just be like living a happy, successful college student life. So those who knew him, they described him as funny, warm, and incredibly talented. Now, his parents, Karen and Michael Laspisa, had recently relocated to Laguna Niguel after retiring, but they kept in close contact with Bryce, who was their only child. So they're living hours apart at this point in time. And just weeks into the semester, those closest to Bryce began noticing some really abrupt and unsettling changes in his behavior. His roommate, Sean Dixon, and his girlfriend, Kim Sly, observed Bryce becoming increasingly erratic. He confessed to them that he had been abusing Vyvanse, which is a stimulant prescribed for ADHD. And I want to talk a little bit about Vyvanse. I have ADHD. I've never taken Vyvanse, but I've taken Adderall in the past. And from what I've heard is Vyvanse is just a really crazy strong version of Adderall, pretty much. Like it's, it's a type of amphetamine, and it's something that, if you are not taking it as prescribed, it is like abusing like a drug. Like it's not just a normal, like, oh, I took too much Advil type of thing. Like
like it can really fuck you up.
It can really fuck you up. And he was not prescribed this medication at all. Like he was just getting this from elsewhere. Now, on top of that, he started drinking really heavily, and he reportedly was finishing large quantities of liquor in short spans, like just drinking straight liquor. And his friends started to notice his moods shifting, not only while he was drinking and taking these drugs, but just all the time. Because what people sometimes don't realize is drinking heavily, alcohol is a depressant, but it's not just a depressant while you're doing it. It's a depressant the day after while you're withdrawing from it. So he was just becoming more withdrawn and unpredictable and erratic behavior. And it was disturbing to his friends to see such a big shift in such a short period of time. Now, all of this came to a head on August 27th. That day, Bryce suddenly broke up with Kim over a text message. And he basically just told her she'd be better off without him, which is concerning because from all accounts, they had a really good relationship. It's not like they were fighting a lot or anything like that. On top of the breakup, he started giving away some of his most prized possessions. He gave his Xbox, and sports people will know this. The people that like the sports ball, but an Xbox.
Oh,
yeah. If they like the sports ball, they'll like the Xbox. But it's basically like a gaming console.
Fascinating.
There's
I'm appealing to all demographics. Okay. So he gave away this Xbox, and he also gave away a pair of diamond earrings, real diamond earrings that his mom had given him as a gift. And he sent this cryptic message to Sean, his roommate. And basically this message sounded like a goodbye message. Now, obviously, Sean is concerned. He was already concerned about Bryce before all of this, just his behavior. And now he's like, what is going on? So Sean is a good friend, and he calls Bryce's mother, Karen. And he's like, look, you need to check on Bryce. Something is not right here. And if any young people are listening and the way I'm talking about Bryce sounds like one of your friends, you should call their mom. Sean did the right thing here.
Hell yeah.
So, good friend.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, good friend. Mm-hmm. And so Karen calls Bryce to talk to him because she's like, what is going on with you? And Bryce basically assured her that he was fine and everything was good and blah, blah, blah. But Karen says, in hindsight, he did sound a little off. Even though he was saying all of the right things, it's the way he was saying them was concerning to her. Mm. Now, that night, Bryce ends up going to Kim's to spend time with Kim, even though he had just broken up with her over text. And Kim, again, found his behavior so concerning that she literally took his keys away from him. And she's like, no, you can't leave. And Bryce was insisting on leaving. And this is one of those situations that's a little bit difficult because when you're in the moment, it can feel one way. But when we're looking at it in hindsight, it's well, was this just she didn't want him to break up with her, so she's trying to make him stay? Or was it really that there was something bad going on? And this is where it gets a little bit my heart breaks for his mom a little bit because Kim ends up talking to Karen on the phone because Bryce basically calls his mom and he tells her, hey, Kim won't let me leave. She won't give me my keys back. And so Karen's like, give the phone to Kim. Let me talk to her. And Kim tells her, he's acting really strange. I just don't think he should drive. He's being really weird. He's trying to leave. And Karen told her, Kim, you need to give him his keys back. And that ends up being not, I don't want to say a bad decision because I see why she did it. You can see it's well, my son's breaking up with this girl. She's upset about it and she just doesn't want him to leave.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that wasn't actually the case, but from the outside, it's really hard to know. And my heart breaks for Karen.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely.
That sucks.
Kim could have not been playing with a full set of bocce balls either at that point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. You don't, and these kids are young. When you're in college, you're dramatic, at least I was.
Yeah.
At least I was. So Karen convinces Kim to give the keys back to Bryce. And Bryce at this point decides that he is going to drive all the way home to his parents' house in Laguna Niguel, which was approximately 450 miles away and would typically take 7 to 8 hours by car, depending on traffic.
Damn.
Yikes.
So just last minute.
That's a full day's car ride for sure.
That is crazy.
He's not up the road. Like, he's not going to be home in 20 minutes.
Anything more than like an hour or two to just decide last minute to me is, I don't know. We already talked about, like, I don't like driving. I'm not good with directions. This stresses me out already. Now, what followed was a baffling sequence of events that suggested that Bryce wasn't just driving home. He was like just drifting around. Around 1 a.m. that night, so this is technically the morning of August 29th, he called his mom and he sounded alert, but records later revealed that he was already really far from campus, heading south on Interstate 5 towards their home. Now, later that morning, he ran out of gas near a town called Buttonwillow, which was a remote stop along the highway. And a roadside assistance worker named Christian ended up delivering gas to Bryce because I guess he just ran out of gas on the side of the road. And he noticed that Bryce seemed tired, but otherwise fine. Christian didn't really find anything concerning enough that like raised alarms, but this encounter would not be their last. So Christian leaves, but he's going to come back because hours later, Bryce was still in the same spot on the side of the road.
Uh-oh.
Hours later.
And he had the gas.
And he had the gas.
Yeah.
So why are you still there?
What are you doing? And I'm sorry. Oh, August. So it was probably hot.
Yeah, I mean, it had hot in California. Yeah.
I'm sensitive to heat.
August in Buttonwillow, which Buttonwillow sounds like a quaint little place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But it also sounds spooky a little bit.
Agree.
I mean, I guess, but
town.
I picture like Christian as this handsome Hallmark movie man.
Of course you do.
You know, who comes out to like get him his gas, if you know what I'm saying, and then checks on him later.
Christian is I will marry this man.
We love
Christian, great guy. We love Christian. He is a Hallmark king for sure. Like,
well, thank you. Please continue.
You know the vibes. So Christian returned to check on Bryce because Karen.
Yeah, what a fucking guy.
What a guy. Because this is what happened. Is like this is like a roadside assistance. Like I don't know if it's AAA or whatever, but it's like a company that they pay for every month. Mm-hmm. So Karen knew that Christian had delivered this gas to Bryce, and when she like hadn't heard from Bryce and didn't know what was going on, she called Christian back and she's like, can you check on Brett, like go see if he's still there because he hasn't like come home yet. And so he goes kind of thinking he's not going to find anything, but he finds Bryce exactly where he left him. And Bryce again tells him, oh, I'm fine. And I'm just blowing off some steam. I'm just like relaxing. But at this point, it had been more than 6 hours since his car had been refueled.
Damn.
6 hours he was sitting there.
Right.
Like I get
listening to a true crime podcast.
No.
Well, true. We don't know.
But here's the thing is like, I get pulling over to take a nap or something. Like if you are feeling like, oh, I'm going to fall, you don't want to fall asleep while driving, but like.
But a 6 hour nap?
6 hours? Yeah. And like when Christian got there, he was awake. It didn't seem like he was pulling over to nap, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, Christian ends up following him for at least a few miles. Like, he's like, you got to get on the road. Like, your parents are concerned. You need to go home. Like, I'm going to follow you. And he followed him to make sure he was going towards the parents' house so he could, like, assure Karen, like, look, I followed him. He's on his way. And he does that. He confirms he's heading south and he does it for a long enough period of time where he feels like, okay, he's actually going to go home now. And eventually Christian turns around because he's not going to drive all the way there. Karen spoke to Bryce several times that day. And each time he promised he was on his way. Mm-hmm. So Christian's saying, yes, I've seen him driving that direction. He is on his way. Bryce is telling her he's on his way, but he never arrives. By 10 p.m. that night, because remember, it was around like 1 a.m. that morning that Christian originally brought him the gas. So this is going on. This is an all day thing.
Right.
By 10 p.m., Bryce still had not shown up. And growing increasingly frantic, his parents contacted the police and asked them to intervene. They're like, something is wrong. We need somebody to go get him. Now, they were able to track his cell phone signal and they located him. Shockingly, still in Buttonwillow. Nearly 24 hours later. Nearly 24 hours after he first left his apartment, Bryce had barely made any progress toward home. And it's like he's telling everybody he's going home.
Mm-hmm.
So when officers arrived, they found Bryce alone but coherent. They administered a field sobriety test, which he passed. They searched his vehicle. They found no drugs, no alcohol, nothing of concern. And when they asked him what he was doing, Bryce reportedly responded calmly without indicating any distress. And at their urging, he contacted his parents once more. They're like, look, your parents are concerned. You need to go home and you need to call them and tell them that you're on your way home. And so he does again. He calls them again and says that he's finally heading home. Now, around 2:08 a.m. on August 30th. So we're like a day and a half into this whole thing.
Can I just say something quickly?
Yes.
I feel like my parents would have been already on the road, driving to little Buttonwillow.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, we're going to intercept each other somewhere because this is nuts.
Yeah.
100%.
What did he say when they asked him what he was doing?
That's what I was thinking.
What was his response?
He just was like, I'm just like blowing off steam. Like, I'm going to go soon. Like,
for 6 hours?
I agree. Like, to me, and I always try to give people grace because obviously these people have seen the worst consequences possible and they know the mistakes that they've made.
Right.
If this was my child, by the time Christian had found him the second time and he was still there, I would have said, Christian, can you please stay with him? Like I'll pay you $1,000 to sit with him. And I am on my way. Just please sit with him for a few hours until I get there.
Yeah, keep eyes on him.
Because it seems evident that this is some sort of mental health.
Right.
Yeah, like he's very much not okay. You know,
it's concerning to me. And he keeps saying he's gonna, like, why don't you want to go home? Why don't you want to go home? And of course, they didn't have the context of the fact that he had given away some of his things and like sent this goodbye message to his friend. So we have a little bit more context than they did, but
that's true. All right.
I agree. Like I would have been on my way. But that's just me. Around 2:08 a.m. on August 30th, Bryce spoke to Karen one last time. He told her he was too tired to continue driving and he planned to pull off and rest. But instead of stopping on the shoulder of the I-5, surveillance footage captured his vehicle exiting the freeway at Lake Hughes Road near Castaic Lake. 2 hours later, the same cameras caught his SUV again in the same area, suggesting that he was just circling around, like he's just driving around this area.
That's so weird.
Right. Tells her he has to stop. He literally does the opposite. Doesn't take, like, he's taking a rest for all these hours. Then when he says he's going to take a rest, he just drives aimlessly. It's
Yeah.
No,
weird.
it's very sad.
It made like what was going through his mind. What was going through his mind. Now, at approximately 5:30 a.m., the police discovered his 2003 Toyota Highlander at the bottom of a 25-foot embankment near the lake's boat launch area. The SUV was on its side with the rear window kicked out from the inside. Inside of the vehicle were Bryce's belongings, his cell phone, his wallet, his laptop, and other personal effects. Blood on the headrest indicated that he may have sustained a minor injury. Again, this was like drops of blood. It wasn't a ton of blood where you think, this could lead to him passing away.
Right. Okay.
But again, there's no sign of Bryce himself. So they did have search and rescue efforts, which began immediately. They had divers scour the lake. Canine units tracked Bryce's scent from the crash to a nearby truck stop, where it abruptly ended, suggesting that maybe he caught a ride.
Nothing good happens at truck stops.
Not ever.
No.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure has taught me anything. Nothing good happens at truck stops.
not food.
Yes.
That's all right.
That's like just a true crime life rule, like one place to avoid. Don't light up a room and don't hang out at truck stops.
Never good.
Now, they also had helicopters with thermal imaging, ground search teams, and volunteers combing through the surrounding hills and brush area. And this is immediately right after they find his vehicle. So it's not days or weeks later that they're looking for him. It's hours later.
Yeah, they got right on that.
But
Right,
despite these exhaustive, exactly. And with all of these exhaustive efforts, no trace of Bryce was found. The terrain around Castaic Lake is rugged. There's thick brush, there's steep drops, there's hidden ravines, and volunteers walked miles and miles in sweltering heat, calling out Bryce's name and searching for any clue, clothing, footprints, anything. Again, nothing, literally nothing, vanished into thin air, basically. The dive team searched the lake multiple times using sonar and divers looking for remains, but remains were never found. Even the most remote areas of the park were combed through. And again, not a drop of evidence outside of that vehicle. In the days that followed, several potential sightings were reported, but none were confirmed. Sadly, a couple days later, a burned body was discovered near Castaic Lake, sparking a brief wave of panic, but it was determined to be unrelated to Bryce's case. I can't imagine for that family hearing that a burned body was found and then it's not him. And after that, weeks just turned into months and months turned into years, and the case faded from the national headlines. But it never left the minds of his parents or his friends or the growing community of true crime followers that have been captivated by this mystery. Now, many theories have been proposed. Some believe that Bryce suffered a mental health crisis, possibly induced by his substance abuse, and wandered into the wilderness where he succumbed to the elements. But like with that, I'm like, how did they not find him? That's what I don't understand about these, like, with Brandon Swanson, I always think the same thing. How does he just disappear? I can see how they go off into the woods and they sadly, something happens and they pass away, but I don't understand how they're never found. Like, not a piece of their clothing, not a piece of their remains, nothing. It's mind-boggling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify, you said that did you say the search dogs were the ones that took it to the truck stop and then after that, that was it?
Yes. So they had dogs tracking his scent and they used two different dogs and they both confirmed the same path. So basically from the crash site, they tracked his scent all the way to a truck stop and then it stopped there. And they both of these dogs, and this was two separate occasions, two different dogs. So they were basically using one to confirm the other.
Yeah.
And the scent ended. So to me, it sounds like he must have gotten into a vehicle with somebody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I don't know. Now, other people think that he may have intended to take his own life. And of course, there was no suicide note or like final message that was ever found. But he did send that one message to his roommate, which I could not find the contents of this message. But basically, his roommate, Sean, said it sounded like an odd, like very vague goodbye. And Sean was confused by it. Like, why are you saying goodbye?
Giving away his belongings. That's what I like.
And breaking up with his girlfriend, like
over a text.
And this girlfriend that everybody said he like really loved this girl, like, and they had a good relationship. Like his friends were shocked that he would break up with her. It wasn't like, oh, well, we knew they were having problems or anything like that.
Well, the one thing that I think about is many episodes ago, Talia and I covered the suicide forest. And it's like, those people, some of them camp out for days as they're contemplating this. So it's kind of like, I feel like that kind of jives with he's in his car for days because he's continuing to contemplate, like he wasn't totally committed to doing it. And I have a feeling that if you're thinking about that and you're not sure, like if you're not going to go home because that's going to definitely push you in the direction of not doing it if you're then there with your family. So like, I just feel like he was trying to buy himself time to just think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly believe that that's what this, like all of this driving around was about. But a third theory suggests, and sometimes I scoff at these people are like, he wanted to disappear and he like faked his own death and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, the kid is 19 years old. He left his phone, his wallet, his laptop, his keys, everything in that car. There's nothing to say that he had been like saving up cash or anything. I'm like, to think that he could just successfully, and this is, I believe it's, hold on, 2013. So it's not like it's 1975 where you can just fake a little document and get a job. It's, I just think that's BS in this case.
When you guys scoffable.
When you guys were telling your story, like I knew that was going to be one of the theories, but the more you told the story, I'm like, wait, this is actually a story where I think maybe this person did leave purposely and then
one time the one kill, yes,
like it almost sounds like he wanted to do that, like he wanted to like go away and just start a new life and have nobody know, and then he just happened to die while trying to do it, you know what I mean? Like he
circumstances,
right?
Yeah, I don't know, it's so odd.
Yeah,
but again, this 19-year-old, no money, no ID, like how could he just vanish so completely?
Yeah, clothes on his back, that's it, but he's gonna start anew.
I'm like, when I was 19, I couldn't even like, I don't know. I was driving the wrong way down one-way streets. So like, I definitely would not be able to, yeah. Now, there's also, of course, the possibility of foul play. Could Bryce have been picked up at the truck stop by someone with malicious intent? Could he have encountered danger while disoriented and vulnerable? And some people believe that he may have unknowingly crossed paths with the wrong person in those early morning hours. But again, there's no evidence to point towards violence. There's no witnesses. And in my mind, this theory is like completely speculative. I do think it's possible that he was picked up by somebody, but I think it's unlikely. There's a lot of signs here pointing towards a mental health crisis. Sure. And that's where I think this case differs from the case of Brandon Swanson, is because with Brandon, there really weren't any signs of a mental health crisis,
right? And
which made it like a little bit more mysterious. And of course, you know, if this was a mental health crisis and Bryce did take his own life, it's still mysterious because what happened to him? How did he get there? How, you know,
how do you just like completely have no trace of him ever again? You know?
Right. But I do think it's possible that, you know, someone took him to a second location and left him wherever he was asking to go. Now, still others have speculated about medical explanations. Could he have suffered a traumatic brain injury in the crash that led to confusion or memory loss? Yeah, maybe. But I think there are so many weird signs before the accident that it's like, even if he did, it's like there was already something going on here in my mind.
For sure.
What haunts many is how a young man could seemingly vanish into thin air within hours of speaking to his mother. And the lack of answers has been devastating for his family and especially his parents, who continue to maintain a Facebook page called Find Bryce Laspisa. So I recommend everybody follows that page. And they also would work with nonprofits to keep the case alive and keep the case in the media. Now, in 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an age progression image showing what Bryce might look like at age 29. And this case, when I read that part of it, because Emily and I are 29, and I'm like, that is so crazy. Like, imagine if Emily went missing 10 years ago. And for the last 10 years, I've been wondering what happened to Emily and where she, like, it breaks my heart for like his family.
Oh, yeah.
But also his friends and his poor girlfriend. Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
That's
haunt them forever. Like, how do you recover from that?
I don't, and it's such a young age to deal with that. Now, this image that they released, it shows a man with slightly older features, but the same, like if you see a picture of Bryce Laspisa, if you know this case, you can picture his face because his face is he has like this bright red hair, he's got freckles, and he just has literally the biggest like smile. And I know that like we say that about a lot of victims and like the beautiful smile. Like he just has the biggest smile. Like you see this one photo of him that's everywhere.
He is a cutie pie.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. And it also makes you think too, like if he really just ran away and he was trying to start a new life. I mean, he was in the national media for a long time. And again, still to this day, like I just feel like he's very recognizable. If
Well,
you've
and when
seen his
you-
picture.
Yeah, we just looked it up.
Yeah.
When you think about, okay, so let's pretend, which I don't think at all is true, that he wanted to start anew, then why the hell does he keep picking up the phone for his mom?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're starting anew, wouldn't you be starting anew then?
Yeah.
And like
new
moving on.
new phone who dis or whatever they say.
Yeah.
And why would you crash the car and leave all of your stuff in it? Why wouldn't you just drive somewhere and take all of your stuff with you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. He was 19. He was allowed to leave. It's not like the police would have picked him up and been like, you have to go home to your parents.
And I'm sure he didn't have all that much money saved to go and start all this. Like,
Right.
sure he wasn't prepared to start a new life, you know, like he wasn't planning on it.
I'm 29 and I couldn't start a new life with the amount of money
Hell
I
no.
got.
That's what I'm saying.
We are not 29, but we couldn't either.
That is correct.
So you're saying it doesn't get better?
Well, maybe for some, they become more
Okay.
responsible, but
I just keep telling myself, I'm like, guys, listeners, we need you to tell your friends about us because I need enough money to start a new life. If I need to, I probably won't, but just in case.
never know.
Well, I mean, from the Chillworthy side of things, I'd like to say to the chillers, please follow A Trial by Podcast
Thank you.
and start
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And we concur. We say vice versa.
Right
I
back.
knew
Right back at you.
as soon as I listened to one of your episodes, I'm like, we're going to vibe. Like, this is going to be
Totally.
good vibes, good times.
Vibes are a 10.
And I know that all of our listeners are going to be checking you guys out, which I'm excited about.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we always
Now-
say we know we're an acquired taste, but
We sure are. Yeah.
Us too. That's why we get along so
Yeah.
well. We're like, I don't know, red wines or something. It's like, you don't like us at first, but the more you drink us, the more
We
you'll
grow
never
on you.
drink a white
yeah, I
wine
gotcha.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. The car accident, back to the case. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
But I was thinking with the car accident, it makes me wonder, was his like level of being sort of like just scattered and like not necessarily thinking straight, was that accidental? And then, oh shit, still not thinking clearly, just got into a car accident. I'm not going to grab my stuff. Like, I just need to go get help and like figure this out. And then came upon someone who like, you know, took advantage of him in like a vulnerable state. But then also, do you think that car accident was intentional and he was like, okay, yes, like I'm going to try to kill myself. And then it didn't work. And then he is fighting to live, like not fighting to live necessarily, but like he kicks his way out of the car. Like he's going to go get help. Like, you know what? Wake up call. I need to go home.
This is a fantastic question. And it was shown from security footage that he was accelerating towards that edge of the
Off it.
cliff.
Oh,
So it did seem to be purposeful. It seemed to be purposeful. But again, people say, oh, maybe there was some medical thing that happened. But I just think there's too much pointing to this was intentional and there was a mental health crisis happening here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking because his family just continues to live in this limbo and they've never moved from their home in Laguna Niguel. Just in case Bryce comes back.
I knew
Oh
you
my
were
God,
gonna say
that shatters me.
To this day, his room remains just as he left it. They mark each birthday, each anniversary, each new tip with a mixture of dread, but also hope. And for them, and I think for anyone, not knowing what happened is the hardest part.
Oh yeah,
For sure.
Now,
not having any kind of closure.
Ever.
I genuinely can't imagine.
No.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, Bryce's disappearance shares eerie similarities with the 2008 disappearance of 19-year-old Brandon Swanson. So it's good to know, you guys. I didn't hear your episode on it. So now I'm like, I have to go listen so we can discuss his case further.
Absolutely.
And so you guys can check out their episode on Brandon Swanson if you haven't heard this case. We also have an episode on Brandon Swanson. I put in here somewhere which episode it is, but I think it's like 22 or something. But like Bryce, Brandon was driving home late at night when something went terribly wrong. He called his parents for help after his car got stuck in a ditch, and he sounded disoriented, but not in distress. Now, his parents stayed on the phone with him for nearly 47 minutes as he walked along rural roads in Minnesota, trying to find a landmark. Suddenly, Brandon exclaimed over the phone, "Oh shit." And then the line went dead and he was never seen or heard from again. Now, both Bryce and Brandon were young men navigating isolated areas at night, seemingly capable of communicating with their families and thinking clearly right up until the moment that they vanished. Both left behind functioning vehicles and disappeared without a trace. And in both cases, there were no signs of a struggle, no definitive leads, and no evidence to explain what happened next. And yes, it was episode 22 for us.
Episode
But
17 for us.
17. Okay, good to know. But I'm one of those. This is how I know I'm too obsessed with true crime. It's like I love listening to the same case told by every podcast I listen to. Like that's one of my, because everybody has a little bit of a different take, and they include little bit like different details and things that maybe some others didn't find important. So
exactly.
I'm really excited to listen to your episode on him. Now, if you have any information on the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa, you can contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Even the smallest clue, or maybe I'm not sure if this is important, it could be the thing that could bring closure to a family that has waited far too long for it. If you take anything away from Bryce's story, I think it should be this. Pay attention to your loved ones. Pay attention to your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is off. And I would imagine, I've never spoken to his family. I don't know their thoughts, but I put myself in their shoes and I imagine that this is one of the things where I'm sure that they wish they had gotten in the car and driven to him. And I don't say that to criticize them. I say that to be like, I think often in life we tell ourselves, oh, I'm just being paranoid. It's going to be fine. Like, let me just chill out a little bit. And it's like, sometimes those instincts are there for a reason. Your body and your mind are telling you that something is off. And I don't know. I'm a little bit probably too paranoid, but my mind is always better safe than sorry. And this case breaks my heart every time I think about it.
And hindsight is 2020.
Exactly.
It's like, of course, you're like you just said, you're thinking this might be an issue, but it's probably not. And it's like, yeah, I mean, in those situations where you just try to do something just because, it might be a little over the top, but it's because you would rather be safe than sorry. Like, I absolutely get that.
Yeah. And I think about when I was that age, I called my parents with so many just like weird, bad scenarios. I'm like, Mom, I'm stuck on the side of the road, or Mom, like, I don't know, I got dropped off at these people's house, or now I don't know how to get home, or whatever. And it's one of those things where it's like, my mom was probably like, oh my God, what are you doing? But I ended up being fine. And that's what you always expect, is that it's going to be fine. And don't be too paranoid like me. Like 99% of the time it is fine. Everything turns out okay. But it's one of those things where it's like, you gotta, I don't know, that's what I like about true crime. Everyone should be a little bit more paranoid in my mind.
Safety first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that is the story. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thorough.
We didn't, I didn't really go with like the theme I was thinking, but I feel like our stories were like very similar in a way, like vanished
Definitely.
without a trace. And
Yeah.
So I had so much fun doing this for you guys.
Me too.
No, it's been very nice. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the whole time beforehand, I'm like, because we've never done this before. We were like, I was nervous. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. We started out with one microphone, still have only one microphone.
But it all worked out.
Yeah, we're trying our best.
Nice and smooth.
Yeah, I think it went great.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can you guys like tell our listeners, obviously we're going to tag your stuff in the show notes, but they can find Chillworthy. What are your social media accounts? Do you have
God
a
bless
website?
you. You want to look that up quick?
Yeah, we are on Instagram.
Since we don't have Ashley here, the social media manager. Hold on a second.
Shout out Ashley.
Shout out Ashley.
We're on Spotify, Apple.
Yeah,
Music.
Spreaker, all of those.
Yeah.
But what is the
YouTube.
Instagram? Yes, YouTube as well.
Oh, I don't know what the Instagram is.
Oh, you don't have it on your phone?
No.
Hold on, I'll get it. Ashley, I got your back.
She'll be so disappointed in us and so thrilled and thankful for you.
I'm like, I know we DM'd at some point. We're at Chillworthy Podcast.
Oh God, we sound like idiots. Yes.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
We're like, yeah, we're online somewhere. We're on the World Wide Web.
We're out there.
The internet.
.com.
Now, for the much smoother answer, why don't you guys tell our listeners where to find you?
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at A Trial by Podcast. There is another podcast that's like a legal podcast that's just Trial by Podcast, which we did not realize until about 15 episodes in. So we are A Trial by Podcast.
Trial.
That's the key.
Okay.
But when you guys see us, you'll see a picture of a Renaissance woman wearing headphones and
I love
holding a
it.
gavel.
Yeah.
Green background.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if that's really confusing to you, you'll get it once you see it.
It's like perfect.
Where did you guys come up with that name?
Okay, I wanted to call our podcast, I wanted to call it Allegedly, like just because so everything has a
Gotcha,
blanket
yeah.
allegedly over
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
But then I looked it up and there were like 50 podcasts called Allegedly that were
I got
like
a feeling.
true crime, but then there were also like celebrity gossip podcasts, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went on ChatGPT and I said, ChatGPT, give me 50 names for a true crime podcast. And one
Listen,
of them was
nothing
a
wrong with
trial
that,
by
man.
podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. I never would have thought of that. So shout out ChatGPT.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love my chat
You
GPT.
do.
Me too.
I do not, but I just don't know how technology works. So to be fair, don't go by.
It's like Google, but better. Once you try
Yes.
it, you're
That's what I
never going to
hear.
be the same.
It's my lawyer. It's my therapist. It's my everything.
It's an endless void of knowledge.
yeah.
Well,
And it will probably kill us all one day.
oh yeah. But I'm always very polite when I talk to it.
Me too.
Oh, I say thank you.
I say please and thank you.
Me
Yes.
Because I'm
Yes.
scared.
Talia and I, we went through the first 3 episodes with a different name. And then on the 4th episode, I told her something and she was like, or no, she told me something and I said, oh, I'm getting the chills. And she said Chillworthy. And I thought, oh, that is a good name for a podcast.
I love it.
Oh, I love that.
I love
so we
it.
changed it.
Yeah. So
What
we
was
just
your-
went back and
What was your name before that?
Dumbfounded.
Love it.
I love that too.
Love it.
yeah, that was fine also. But,
I like Chillworthy. Yeah,
I
that's-
like
we
Chillworthy.
just
I like that.
edited out the other name and in the first 3 episodes and changed it all up. And
Yeah,
Hell
we
yeah.
that's that.
I like it.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing
Yeah, thank
this
you
with us.
guys.
I feel like it was
Yeah,
so fun.
thank you for inviting us.
Of course. All right. Well, we always end every episode. I always say, and court is adjourned. Isn't
That
that?
is
You like
cute.
that?
That's cute.
It's
We
on
need a
theme.
gavel. We need a
Love
gavel
that.
to like smack. You know?
I know. I should like insert a clip, like the Law and Order, like dun dun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah.
Some sound effects.
Well, we will also end with our goodbye message, which is, as always,
Stay safe.
and stay chill.
Yes.
I love it.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.